Instagram Live. I'm going to be talking a little bit about our OCD groups that we run, the WhatsApp group, the Facebook group, and how they work, what they're like, and a bit about our group calls as well. So first of all, you've got the Facebook, the OCD Recovery Facebook group. The OCD Recovery Facebook group's got about 7,500 people in that group. And it's one of the fastest growing OCD group for the length of time it's been around. And we built that group because we want to really change how OCD is dealt with around the world, because it's in the dark ages still in so many ways to where it needs to be. So the thing with that Facebook group is it provided a platform where people, wherever they've got OCD, wherever they are in the world, they can speak to others. And we've got loads of moderators in there, a lot more moderators than many groups operate with. And we do that so that we can get everything, all the things that people are talking about with OCD dealt with and moving down the recovery journey. So it's not just a sort of spiraling negative sort of vibe in there, which often OCD forums are. When I used to be in them 17, 18 years ago, just full of reassurance all day long, full of negative sort of stuff all the time. Oh, you'll never recover. I've never recovered. What are your symptoms? Oh, I've got that all day long, which does nothing, makes you feel horrendous. So that was why we got into building the Facebook group, to first of all change that, to create that platform so that everyone, wherever they are in the world, can have OCD help for free. Then we've got our WhatsApp groups. Now, the WhatsApp groups are more sort of social thing. They're part of coming into the one-to-one and group coaching that we provide. And then people have the free access to the WhatsApp groups whilst they're having coaching with us in one-to-one or group format. Now, those are much more fun, sociable, a lot more sort of banter in there and people all on the same journey and learning from each other. And obviously it's smaller groups because it's very focused on people that are working towards recovery. Whereas the Facebook group is broad. Anyone can join the Facebook group. Now, with the WhatsApp groups, when I built these, I thought to myself, how do I want these to operate? Because it's a difficult thing to operate. It's not easy. I needed to think, did I want it to be somewhere which was like strictly OCD, very, very focused on OCD, not many jokes, all sort of strict and focused on OCD. The problem with that was people got bored and they just thought, oh, okay, this is just like reading a textbook, some advice. They didn't really want to spend much time in there. Not only did they get bored, they felt isolated again. They didn't really connect with the people. So I thought, well, we've got to make this like real life. It's got to be exactly the same as what WhatsApp groups are like with mates, but with OCD in the mix. But there's another element in there, because if you just did that, it would be haywire. So what we did was we thought, well, we want these WhatsApp groups to be a place that's fun so that people can have banter and jokes and so on. But it needs to have balance so that you're taking into account people's feelings and how they're doing and watching that and keeping an eye on people. Because obviously in groups, you're always going to have sort of laughing and joking. Someone might take something the wrong way. So it needs to be moderated, needs to be balanced. But it was very important for us to build that in that format, because the WhatsApp groups sort of acted as a lifesaver for people, because it's 24 hours available to them, although they don't use it compulsively. It's there for them 24 hours. So they might be having a panic attack at 1 a.m, thinking of calling an ambulance to go to A&E. If they've got a group who's been through similar things, they can offer advice and can be very helpful for their situation. So the groups are a really sort of helpful part of that whole thing, that whole experience. But we have to balance and moderate that, because WhatsApp groups will always go down that format. They'll always be sort of in a format of people sort of joking with each other and maybe someone taking a joke too far and so on. So it needs to be balanced, like in anything in life. So that's the WhatsApp group. Then you've got the Skype group calls. Now with the Skype group calls, what happens is it's sort of 20 to 30 people on the group call, and they're all asking questions and going through their OCD. And so we have to work on a question and answers format where we're going through their questions, giving them responses. Because it's not specifically uniquely targeted to them like a one-to-one, it's broader than that, but it's focusing on their questions so we can get through those and we work towards recovery. So it's a less sort of jokey atmosphere as you would see in the WhatsApp. and it's much more focused than the WhatsApp and the Facebook group because it's very targeted in that moment towards recovery. However, in the WhatsApp group, there is a lot of disputing irrational beliefs going on, loads of sharing exposures they're doing, all that stuff. And in the Facebook group, you are getting that as well, but it's kind of a bit more watered down because people are coming in that aren't having coaching with us, coming in broadly, talking about their experience with maybe their therapist in whichever country they're in and what they're doing and so on like that. And that's what keeps the cycle with, that's what keeps them learning new things to help them with their OCD. So they're getting a second opinion, because otherwise what happens is people are coming into those groups. They might be with a therapist in, let's say in Paris, and they're not learning very well about OCD. So they come in there and they ask for a second opinion and they speak to us and we work through that and we help them understand to get a second opinion on the things that they weren't realizing, because so often people go into therapy, they learn something about OCD and they don't learn fully about it, and they're getting reassurance maybe, and they're stuck in a compulsive cycle perhaps, and so they miss out on so much. And only when they come to us and they realize that those are all the things that I was missing, that's were all the things that I wasn't seeing, and that becomes let me just get a charger. And so then they realize all the things that they were missing, the things that they needed to do to get better that hadn't been covered. And so it's very, very important, just put a light on here, it's very, very important that we lay out that structure for them of the things they need to do. Otherwise, OCD, you can easily feel very, very lost very quickly. It is very much a disorder like that, where a lot of what we're doing is showing people how they can get better and what's involved. Otherwise, it's you just start to feel completely isolated, like nothing's working for me. And people jump from A to Z very quick. Like when you're stuck with OCD, you think in a very, very short time, nothing's working for me. I'm never ever going to get better. I'm stuck like this forever and ever. Because if you don't know what the next steps are or can see a way out, and something hasn't been working for you, like you've just been taught thoughts of thoughts over and over again, then that's not going to be very helpful. You're going to be stuck. And you're going to then think, this is my life, just as it is now. And then you very quickly lose hope and feel not very motivated. So that is the point of all those groups, to provide that. Obviously, with the WhatsApp group, it's a very sort of much more sort of focus, so people can see it can straight away in real time, very quickly reach somebody, speak to somebody else, not in a compulsive way, but get help like that. And that having that is very different to when I went through my own journey, where I was going for one therapy session every 2 weeks or whatever. So you're for the other 13 days and all the other hours of the day, you're on your own dealing with it. So it's a very, very different experience. So I wanted to provide something which provided a much more round-the-clock service so that people there. But whilst balancing that, it's a difficult balance, because you're trying to strike a familiar balance where they have a relationship with me that would be more... often when you go to, for example, if I'd gone to therapy and I'd been in there for an hour, I would have that therapy session. There would be no interaction after that session. So I wouldn't be followed up with the homework. Obviously, with the WhatsApp group, it follows that up a lot more. It is more familiar. You are more familiar in those groups than you would necessarily be if you just went to one therapy session a week. But I think it's vital to have more familiarity with that disorder, with the person you're working with, because if you didn't, it's very isolating. The nature of the disorder used to make me feel so lost and trapped because of this. Let me paint a picture for you, and let's go back a little bit, sort of right back to, let's go right back to the very beginning of my journey. Bear in mind, I'm 35, so if you're looking at that time frame, when you used to go into therapy, and people older than me would definitely seen that, you'd sort of go in and sit in an armchair or whatever, and then the therapist would be in a bigger armchair than you, and there'd be then a big bookshelf behind. which is obviously in your head when you go in there, feels like you're sitting next to someone who's extremely clever in a much larger chair than you, in a very sort of situation where you feel like you are the subject, the thing that he's looking at, and like you're broken and there's something wrong with you and he's in a much higher chair. So you feel very isolated from the situation and a lot less than. And that wasn't a good position to be in. That wasn't where you don't want to be in there, because you're feeling like you're broken and they're sort of working on you. Whereas what I always liked, and what Albert Ellis used to do, was always share things about him, all problems he had. And he used to share many things that you'd think, God, that was pretty crazy what he shared, or whatever. But it created the link, because you realise, he's a human. And Albert Ellis used to swear in sessions and say shit, fuck, whatever. And he didn't care. He used to say, well, because humans, we do. Why do we go somewhere else and then suddenly have to be different? It's like what I tweeted today. I was talking about with doctors, dentists and lawyers and accountants. You go in there, you turn into like a robot, and you walk in and you think, I can't laugh, joke or be a human. Absolute garbage. Every time I go into a dentist, doctor, accountant, lawyer, whatever, I joke with them, I'd be exactly the same. Of course, you are focused on what you're there for. You know what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to do, and that's carried out correctly and professionally. But at the same time, we can't be like a robot. The robot problem is exactly the reason people feel isolated. With OCD, you need the person to see that you are real. You make mistakes. You've done the same as them. You've seen things and acted wrongly and done all these kinds of things the same as they've done. And that is so important, because otherwise the person thinks that like you're sort of high and mighty above them, that you never make mistakes, that they make mistakes, but you never do. You're above that. You're different. You're special. You're not fallible like that. And you've got to. OCD recovery is all about the realization that we are all fallible human beings, that we can all that we can all make mistakes. That's what it's all about. If we don't see that, it's very, very difficult to recover, because we hold ourselves so rigidly, like, oh, I will never make a mistake. I couldn't do that. We need to see that. We need to see, hold on, the guy who's helping me, he's made that mistake. Oh, he's done that. People with OCD, they have a mistake that they made in their head when they were like 15 years old. They hold themselves like judge and executioner their whole life, feeling chronic guilt and anxiety. It's very, very important for them to see that other people make that same mistake as them, and you can. And I think you won't get that unless you can see that closely. So when we set those groups up, I wanted places where people would be in themselves. You could see that guy has really fucked something up. That person has really screwed something up. That person has just lost his temper. That person has just got annoyed. That person has just cried. Because it's real. That reality is what changes things. You don't want an environment where things are hidden and not said. Oh, don't say that, because that thing they might, then we shouldn't say that thing, and we shouldn't say that thing, and oh, we can't say that because that might scare someone. Same as trigger warnings, absolute madness all across the internet. Trigger warning here, trigger warning there. People are so scared of getting hurt and so comfortable that we're keeping them too secure. That's not what we want. We want people, there's a risk. Maybe they will get triggered. Maybe they'll see something on Instagram story and they'll get triggered and they'll feel more anxious. Why? Because that is life. That is reality. Life doesn't have trigger warnings. You don't walk down the street and someone goes, oh, something's happened, or saying there's a big sign, oh, trigger warning, don't see that, or don't think that, or whatever. That doesn't happen. There are no trigger warnings. Life just happens. And that is exactly the same way that groups should be. We should be encouraging, triggering. We shouldn't be running from it. And all these forums that are just full of all trigger warnings and be careful of this and be careful of that is a bloody disaster, because you're teaching the person to stay completely comfortable at all times, that they can be nice and safe and protected and nothing ever happens. And that is not the way you're going to get better. You have got to get used to things happening randomly. And that's what happens in the group. Someone will say something, someone will post something, and then they think, oh, that was a bit scary, and then work through it. Obviously, there's a balance. If somebody comes in who's new, who's never seen anything, you don't want to be sort of posting scary articles online that relate to their theme, bang, straight away. But if they stumble across that on the internet or on an Instagram story or whatever, so be it. That's a part of life and you adjust with it. So I think that is all a very, very important part of how we run those groups. Now, let's have a look at some of these questions and see where we are before I fall too far behind. In relation to that question, what to do about feeling afraid to live in the fullest due to the lack of certainty of the past. Lack of certainty of the past, the only reason you're chasing that is because you've got conditional self-acceptance. You think that you think if something happened, then your whole life's ruined, you're ruined, and so you're chasing that. You don't need to know that. As you work towards unconditional self-acceptance, it will completely change. But because you haven't got an understanding of that at the moment, that's why you're searching for that, because you believe that's your way out to get peace. For the WhatsApp groups, if you want to join the WhatsApp groups, you need to be partaking in either the one-to-one coaching or the group coaching. You don't have to partake in it regularly. You only need to attend either like one group Skype call or so on. But if you want info about that, email info@ocdrecovery.com. Is it normal for my mind to think that colours are answers? Like it thinks a question that whatever colour I see is the answer. Like if it is red or no, that green for yes, please help. I will cover that in a sort of magical thinking related OCD video specifically, covering elements of that. I would need more information on that, on how that's latching and what you're specifically scared of to really get an idea of what's going on there. POCD, we've got lots of videos on the YouTube channel, the POCD playlist. If you have a look for Oliver's videos on that, very, very in detail, all about POCD, chronic guilt and all the feelings that are attached to that. Update on your book, still doing that, haven't finished the book. We've got the new website being launched in the next week or so, that's one of the next things that we've just finished building, but the book is in progress, and I will give you updates on that soon. My girlfriend left and blocked me. I have a fear that she won't come back, and I keep assessing her fear. The situation there is learning to accept that even if she didn't come back, and the ROCD videos on the YouTube channel will be very helpful for you if you look at the ROCD playlist about learning to accept yourself and see that we do not need others' approval, we do not need them there, that we're okay and we have lived just fine without their presence, we are still intact. I think that's a really good, important ones for you to watch because they do cover all of those elements attached to that fear there. How do you know when ROCD isn't ROCD? Kirsty covers those in the ROCD videos. Check those out. Thank you, Victoria. Wanting to cover this topic because it never gets covered. So it's very, very important. All about that, what I was talking for any of you, this will be uploaded onto YouTube so you can rewind and see what's going on. Talking all about the therapy format and why we need to connect with people and not feel separate so we don't feel isolated in relation to therapy and coaching dynamics. Videos and exposures, yes, we will be doing those. We'll be covering lots of different topics. We're uploading about 20 new videos to the YouTube channel a week. Unfortunately, Mr. Nick, who's always on our YouTube channel, has got COVID at the moment. So we've got to wish him a lot of luck to getting better because he's not well. But he'll be back up there doing a lot of videos. But I certainly don't want him doing a lot of videos at the moment when he's got COVID because he's coughing so much. And he's with sensory motor OCD, having COVID as well. And for anyone with OCD having COVID, not the easiest. That question there, Hayley. Imagine getting a trigger warning before you die. Anxiety overload. Yeah, it's a good example. I hadn't thought of that one. I like it. It's very good. Fear of death we'll be covering in more detail as well because fear of death is a very common topic. We will be covering that. The HOCD question, you want to have a look at the HOCD playlist. There's lots of videos in relation to that. Suicide OCD will be covering in a lot more detail in videos as well. I've done some pieces on COVID. There are COVID videos on the YouTube channel. If you look on the YouTube channel, you will find COVID videos if you scroll back a bit. It will be in the health OCD section. OCD will always search for new themes because you're sending out a signal that you want to be at peace, so you don't want any other themes there. So you're like, please, no more themes. I don't want any themes. So it's searching. Is there a theme? Maybe there's a theme. What if there's a theme? And it's doing that and scanning, and that's what causes it. It's like anything. Look, in life, we tend to view everything very black and white, okay? If we read an article in the paper, we quickly, whatever way that journalist written the article, we either believe it or we anti it. We either take it as true or not true. There's no in between. We don't sort of go, which we should. This is the problem with a lot of the world today. We should go, well, there's opinion of theirs. That's probably not completely accurate. That's been sort of, we tend to write people off for all kinds of things, right? Write them off completely. Oh, that person's done that, written off, right? Especially with cancel culture. Completely madness with that, how that operates. Now, in relation to themes, your brain is going, right, I need another thing. You did that, you're bad. If you did that, oh, you're bad. There's no black and white sort of flex. It's all black and white. There's no grey zone. There's also no flexibility there. So we need to incorporate that. We need to learn to embody and believe that, because that is what is fueling everything. But we're so used to that black and white. Oh, if that's there, if that's this, that's terrible. Everything we think of, Like I'm looking at my hair in this video, think I need to get a haircut. But I'm not thinking, my hair will probably be all right for the next week. I'm thinking I need to get a haircut now. So everything is in a black and white. Everything we do, everything we look at is take an action, don't take an action. This is right, this is good. This is bad, that's wrong. They're right, they're wrong. I love them, I don't love them. There's no grey zone in between, which is what we're learning. We're learning to be more flexible because OCD loves that rigid. It loves that locked on, really rigid. That's what it loves. It operates in that rigid environment. Fear of fear. I did a video on that last week. So you haven't seen that, obviously, it's on the YouTube channel. If you go on there and have a look at fear of fear, there is a video on that there. You're convinced it's not OCD, you're always going to be convinced, same as all OCD. I mean, people don't, I remember when I walked into an OCD group once, I thought everyone here has got OCD apart from me. Mine's real. They've got OCD, but mine is real. Mine is different. And that's what it's going to do. If it didn't do that and you didn't feel it was real, it wouldn't be a disorder because you just think everything was fake, everything wasn't real. And then you just brush it off and there wouldn't be a disorder. Do I need to specifically disclose what my thought is for me to recover? No, you don't. People often come into me and then they start confessing a long POCD story. They don't need to confess that. To understanding acceptance gets around that they don't need to disclose that specifically. Sometimes they may need to sort of give an understanding of it because it's hard to work it out otherwise from me without some understanding, but it doesn't need to be all the specific details. They're not needed in that depth. Savage that, I tell you, just compared me to an old English politician. I'm going to accept you for that. I'm going to let you off. I'm going to accept that. Can someone do a clip on hyper-responsibility in OCD if possible? Hyper-responsibility, look, most OCDs is a sort of heightened sense of responsibility. That's what we've got. We're over the top responsible. So take COVID, for example. At the beginning of it, we were or a lot of people now, obviously, but very over-responsible. Could I give my mum COVID? Could I this COVID? Well, hyper-responsibility. But that was sort of natural there because there was a natural element of we've got to take precaution. But then it went into overdrive where we were like, taking overboard because we've got OCD. So it is going to do that. We've got to watch ourselves. Everything is going to try and jump out of the box. We're always going to take it too far. That's the nature of it. We've got OCD. That's what it's going to do. I remember when I was in Egypt, I was on a small boat going down the Nile, and then someone said to me, "Oh, you can get bilharzia here, which is like a thing that gets into your body and can make you very ill." through the skin. So I thought, oh my God, I've definitely got it. 100% back on Google, 100% got this, guaranteed I've got it, nearest hospital, everything, because we jumped straight through it. We don't look for, oh, that's rare, I don't need to, but we go straight down the rabbit hole. And that's what we're learning not to do. We're learning not to go down the rabbit hole, because the rabbit hole is what's got us in so much trouble. So we're learning to very, very much learn to sit back from that rabbit hole, go with that uncertainty and not dive right down it. That is what we're learning. Is it helpful to go into the content of the thought? Absolutely. You're going to have to go into the content of the thought. It's because people avoid the content of the thought so much because they're told thoughts are thoughts, don't go anywhere near it, they stay stuck. You will often have to go into it. Not always. You're not always going to have to go into it. A lot of time you're able to leave it thoughts are thoughts, especially further along in the journey when you've got better acceptance. But earlier on, if it's locked on in the background with, say, like chronic guilt pumping out all the time, you are going to have to go into the content of the thought. Do I think cancel culture is a place for celebrities who've done horrific things? Look, the problem with it is your cancel culture is this idea that you write somebody off. And it's a sort of power thing, like I've got the power to just close them down. And it comes from that. But like, yes, if someone does something very bad to some degree, or they make a big mistake, right? If we don't need to close everything that they do down, depending on the circumstances. And even if we did close it down, we still have to appreciate all the good things done. So let's take an extreme case, okay? Let's take an extreme case. Let's take a Michael Jackson. Do I listen to Michael Jackson? Absolutely. Do I like Michael Jackson's music? Absolutely. Do I think he was amazing as a musician? Amazing, right? Even if someone commits those crimes, you can still appreciate their amazing talent. That does not rule out that talent. Humans aren't just the one thing ruined because of the one thing they did. They are all these different behaviours. So he is still an amazing musician. Why would I not want to listen to his music just because he's done another thing? It doesn't make any sense. So we've got to learn to have that balance. And cancel culture is like that. It's this sort of writing people. It is just very much a thing of sort of, I want to crush that thing, or a lot of time there's a jealousy and I want to write that thing off. But why do we need to? Why destroy something that someone's worked on their whole life in the majority of these cases where it's an offence that a lot of people have committed and a lot of people have done these things or made these mistakes? And humans make mistakes. It's very easy for humans to do things. People judge these people like, oh, I would never make that mistake myself. It's easy for humans to make mistakes. It's easy for humans to get angry. It's easy for humans to say stupid things. It's very easy. But we judge it like, oh, they must not do it, like it's a universal law. They must not have crossed that line. Okay, they have done. Do we need to take everything away from them? And in the majority of cases, I don't think we do. I think it's absolutely irrational. And I think it causes a hell of a lot of problems. And destroys a lot of lives and great things that people have built and things that are going to improve things. So yeah, I think it's got completely out of hand. Let's have a look here at some of these things. Yeah, accepting the worst case scenario is tricky. The Albert Ellis guilt and shame video is very good for that. It's a 3-part video on YouTube, not on my channel, on YouTube in general. Have a look at that. Some good videos on there. Dire Need for Love's another good Albert Ellis video. Unconditional Self-Acceptance, he does another one. Good videos for you to check out and watch that really cover helping to get in that. And obviously the books, The Myth of Self-Esteem and How to Stubbornly Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable. For all these ROCD questions, please come to our YouTube channel, ROCD playlist, and come to one of the webinars on ROCD. There's another one coming up soon before Christmas. And I mean, those are really game-changing events. Hannah Maggs, Oliver Vesey speaking at those. Really good knowledge of ROCD there to help you guys out. So definitely come along to one of those. Just have to email info@ocdrecovery.com to reserve. Okay, guys, I think I've covered most of the questions there. I will be back on another Instagram live soon, covering more. Hope that covered a lot of things that you wanted to hear about, especially in relation to sort of therapy and coaching format and feeling not connected from people. So I hope that's helped a lot of you to see that. They're all things from on my journey that I just didn't like, that I saw was wrong, things that I saw was broken. I hope in 10, 20 years' time, a lot of people will look back and see that how OCD has changed, hopefully by the things that I do to make that change. I just look for things that sort of, as a rational human, things that I just thought didn't work, things that I thought in life I could see that if I'm going through this and this is that difficult, other people are all going through it and just suffering silently because they're not talking about it. And there wasn't platforms like this today. I was adverse to using social media. I wasn't the kind of person who was a big fan of social media. I was never really interested in it. But then everyone was saying to me at the time, they're like, Robbie, you have to go on it because it's the only way to reach that number of people. And social media is like the books of today. And when we used to write books in the past to reach a lot of people, we can reach even more now with social media. And I think that's so vital. So yeah, I hope that changes. Everything is about that. Like with all of us, sharing information between ourselves about our OCD journey, things that I hear all the time. I'll speak to maybe an 8-year-old girl who's got OCD, who'll tell me some amazing insight on OCD that I'd never thought of. I'll speak to an 80-year-old guy who's got OCD and he'll tell me an amazing insight on something about OCD. Hearing things all the time. I work with thousands and thousands of people. We're probably one of the places that works sort of very, very closely with a very large number of people out of anywhere because of all of the group formats and stuff. So I'm seeing so many OCD cases all the time. So you learn and see so many different insights into OCD all the time. You see that. You never think that you can just learn from somebody who's sort of the other side of it or been dealing with it for a long time. You can learn it from anywhere where you look. It's like anything in life. You can learn a lesson from walking through the park about how you view your life, just some new philosophy that you've adopted just from something you've seen. So you can very much see that through the people you meet. And I learned that when speaking to children with OCD. And I think that was a very interesting insight they have. And they're only 8 or 9 years old. But it's just because of their interpretation of the situation that I hadn't seen in that way. So yeah, look out for it in anywhere. Things that you can learn, things that you can see that can change your life. Anything's a lesson if you're looking for it. And anything's a negative and something to complain about if you're looking for that too. So you've got to look. Anything that happens to me, bad, annoying, frustrating, whatever it is, I'm constantly looking from the beginning of what can I learn, what can I adjust, what can I do with that information. And that's a sort of lesson that I would like to give to you to really think about everything, the OCD journey, what it's doing to your life, what benefits it's bringing you, anything, any argument you have, any problem you have, any difficulty you're going through, looking for the benefit in that in any situation you can. Guys, I will see you on the next Instagram Live. All right, guys, take it easy. See you later.